Europe before 1914 was a continent simmering under the pressure of rival empires, each convinced that its destiny lay in expansion, dominance, and military preparedness. The rapid rise of industrialization had armed nations with technologies far more lethal than their leaders truly understood, and old diplomatic structures strained under the weight of new ambitions. Germany, only recently unified, had become an economic powerhouse and sought to translate that power into colonial and naval dominance. Britain, accustomed to ruling the seas unchallenged, saw Germany's ambitions as a direct threat to its empire. France, still nursing the wound of losing Alsace-Lorraine to Germany in 1871, maintained a fervent desire for revenge and a restoration of national pride. Russia, enormous but fragile, positioned itself as protector of the Slavs, entangling itself in Balkan rivalries that inflamed tensions with Austria-Hungary. Meanwhile, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a patchwork of ethnic groups held together through centuries of monarchy, feared the growing tide of nationalism that threatened to tear it apart. The Ottoman Empire, though weakened and losing territory, remained a significant piece on the geopolitical chessboard. These empires were connected by a web of treaties and commitments that their leaders believed would prevent war by creating overwhelming consequences for aggression. Instead, they forged a system so rigid that once one piece fell, all others followed. So when Gavrilo Princip fired those fatal shots in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914, killing Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, the world stepped onto a path it could no longer turn away from. The assassination was not merely the work of a lone radical. It was the expression of deep nationalist resentments in the Balkans. Austria-Hungary's outrage was immediate, but its response was carefully calculated. Backed by Germany, it sent Serbia an ultimatum with demands so severe that no sovereign nation could accept them in full. Serbia agreed to most of the terms, but balked at those that infringed on its judicial authority. Austria-Hungary declared war anyway. Russia mobilized to defend Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia. France, bound by its alliance with Russia, prepared for conflict. Germany activated the Schlieffen Plan, invading Belgium to reach France quickly. Britain, a guarantor of Belgian neutrality, declared war on Germany. In the span of a single week, nearly all of Europe was ablaze. The early weeks of the war shattered the illusion that it would be a quick and decisive conflict. German forces drove deep into Belgium and northeastern France, but the Allies halted their advance at the Marne River, where French troops, rushed to the front in Parisian taxis, managed to repel the German offensive. The war of movement collapsed as both sides dug trenches to protect themselves from gunfire. What began as shallow ditches evolved into an elaborate, entrenched labyrinth stretching from the Swiss border to the North Sea. This was the Western Front, a frozen line of mud, blood, and misery. Life in the trenches defied the imagination of civilians back home. Soldiers spent weeks on end in waterlogged ditches, surrounded by the stench of decaying bodies, sewage, and stagnant mud. They lived with the constant threat of artillery, snipers, poison gas, and sudden death during night raids. Rats feasted on corpses. Lice burrowed into uniforms and skin, causing trench fever. Rain turned trench floors into thick soup, leading to trench foot, an infection so severe that toes or entire feet often had to be amputated. For all this suffering, soldiers were expected to go over the top during offensives, climbing ladders into a hail of machine gun fire. The weapons of the 19th century, rifles, bayonets, cavalry tactics, were catastrophically mismatched against the machine guns, rapid-fire artillery, and barbed wire of the 20th. Entire battalions were wiped out in minutes. In 1915, the war expanded geographically and technologically. The Gallipoli campaign saw British, French, Australian and New Zealand forces attempt to seize control of the Dardanelles from the Ottomans. Expected to be a swift victory, the campaign devolved into a brutal stalemate on steep cliffs and narrow beaches. After 8 months of futile fighting and heavy casualties, the Allies withdrew. That same year, poison gas made its horrifying debut when German forces released chlorine clouds at Ypres. Soldiers choked, clawed at their throats, and died in agony. Gas masks became essential, and chemical warfare escalated as each side developed deadlier agents. Meanwhile, aerial warfare was evolving rapidly. Airplanes that once served merely as scouts were soon armed with machine guns. The romantic idea of the fighter ace caught public imagination, but the skies were unforgiving. Inexperienced pilots often lasted only days. By 1916, the stalemate on the Western Front had become a machine that consumed human life at an unprecedented rate. The Battle of Verdun, launched by Germany to break French morale, turned into the longest battle of the war. For 10 months, French and German soldiers fought over a few square miles of ruined forts and pulverized earth. Verdun became a symbol of national determination, but the cost was unimaginable: over 700,000 casualties. To relieve Verdun, Britain launched the Battle of the Somme. On July 1, 1916, the first day of the Somme offensive, the British Army suffered nearly 60,000 casualties, including 19,000 dead, the bloodiest day in its history. By the end of the campaign, over 1 million men had fallen, and the Allies had advanced only a few miles. Tanks made their first appearance on the Somme, lumbering metal beasts that terrified German troops, despite frequent mechanical breakdowns. They foreshadowed a new era of mechanized warfare. On the Eastern Front, battles unfolded across massive distances. The Russians, though hampered by poor infrastructure and leadership, possessed a vast population. However, after staggering defeats at Tannenberg and the Masurian Lakes, their losses mounted. The stresses of war exacerbated political turmoil at home. Shortages of food and fuel sparked riots. Soldiers mutinied. In 1917, the February Revolution toppled Tsar Nicholas II, ending centuries of Romanov rule. Later that year, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized control and negotiated the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany, pulling Russia out of the war and ceding huge territories. This allowed Germany to transfer hundreds of thousands of troops to the Western Front. The war also reshaped the Middle East. The Ottoman Empire, aligned with the Central Powers, fought on multiple fronts. In Arabia, a revolt against Ottoman rule, supported by British officer T.E. Lawrence, spread across the desert. British forces advanced through Mesopotamia and Palestine, capturing Baghdad and Jerusalem. In Africa and Asia, German colonies were seized by Allied troops, including Japanese forces acting under agreements with Britain. At sea, the British blockade slowly strangled Germany, cutting off vital imports and causing widespread famine. Germany retaliated with its U-boat fleet, sinking merchant ships without warning. The sinking of the Lusitania in 1915, which killed civilians including Americans, outraged the United States. But it was the resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare in 1917, combined with the revelation of the Zimmermann telegram, Germany's proposal for a military alliance with Mexico, that pushed the US into the war. American industry mobilized with astonishing speed, supplying the Allies with weapons, trucks, and food. By mid-1918, American soldiers were arriving in France in massive numbers. Germany knew that time was running out. In spring 1918, it launched a massive offensive, hoping to split the Allied lines and force a negotiated peace before American troops tipped the balance. German stormtroopers made impressive gains, using infiltration tactics to bypass strongpoints and sow chaos. But the German army was exhausted, its supply lines stretched to breaking and its home front collapsing. When the Allies counterattacked later that year, they did so with overwhelming strength. The 100 Days offensive shattered the German lines and pushed their armies back toward their own borders. Meanwhile, revolution spread through Germany. Sailors mutinied, workers went on strike, and the Kaiser abdicated, fleeing to the Netherlands. The new German government sought an armistice. On November 11, 1918, at 11 a.m., the fighting stopped. After 4 years of slaughter, the guns finally fell silent. The war's aftermath reshaped the world. The Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh reparations on Germany, redrew borders, and dissolved empires. Austro-Hungary was broken into new nations. The Ottoman Empire collapsed, and its lands were divided into mandates administered by Britain and France. The Russian Empire had become the Soviet Union. Millions of soldiers returned home to societies changed beyond recognition, scarred by loss, economic hardship, and political upheaval. The psychological wounds were deep. An entire generation was traumatized by the brutality they had witnessed. Technology had advanced at a staggering pace, but at the cost of human suffering on an unimaginable scale. The hope that the war would be the war to end all wars proved tragically naive, as the unresolved grievances and punitive treaties laid the groundwork for an even greater conflict just 2 decades later. The shadow of World War I stretched far into the 20th century, shaping international relations, national identities, and the very way humanity understood the horrors of modern warfare.